Welcome to Young Asia Television.
Representative Neil Buhne spoke to TV to give some insight into the humanitarian situation in the north.
I'd like to start just by asking you to give us a brief overview of the humanitarian situation in Sri Lanka right now in terms of the IDP situation and the conflict.
Yeah, essentially the UN agencies here are working to support the national response to help the tens of thousands of people who have been displaced. And the people who have been displaced most recently have been those in the northern districts. We estimate that there's anywhere between 40,000 and 70,000 people who've been displaced since June because of the upsurge in the fighting. Those people have, in some cases, been displaced a number of times. They've had to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and they've gradually moved from the west to the center of Kilinochchi district, and some of them have moved from the east towards the center of Kilinochchi district. So there's a number of, or an increasing number of people who actually are concentrated around the town of Kilinochchi.
Now the government, in a press conference yesterday, reiterated its commitment to providing shelter and relief to these people. What do you feel about this statement, and how closely are you working with the government?
Well, the commitment, I think, is a long-standing one. The government cooperates with international organizations and embassies through something called the CCHA, the Coordinating Committee on Humanitarian Affairs, and its objective precisely is to how to facilitate humanitarian response. Earlier it was focusing more on the east, now it's focusing more on the north. And we have multiple committees together with the government on different subjects, whether it be on issues of shelter, sanitation, education, health, food, logistics. So there's quite an intimate cooperation, but of course the situation is very difficult when you're talking about IDPs who are displaced from conflict, because those people are fleeing from fighting. You're in situations where the security situation isn't clear, and it's difficult to get supplies to them. But the people have a right to get supplies, and humanitarian agencies, through international law, which the government respects, have a right to reach those people as well with that assistance.
Okay. And you talked about food and shelter. I've read that there's a food shortage as well, and difficulties in getting food to them. What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally we have sort of adequate supplies getting in. It's difficult sometimes to get them to people because there's been a lot of movement from place to place. In terms of food, it's probably adequate at the moment if the situation doesn't further worsen. Food sometimes is purchased locally, sometimes it's transported from some distance. I think in terms of supplies, more difficult has been issues of shelter and water and sanitation because the people have had to move, and they don't necessarily have places to move to. When they first were displaced, they perhaps could stay with relatives, but as they've been displaced longer or they've gone further away, they don't have that option. So they're either in open areas where we try to find shelters for them, or sometimes in buildings like schools, which is possible at the moment because it's school holidays, but would cause a problem later on when the students should be coming back.
Now there are major plans to resettle some 200,000 civilians back into government-controlled areas of the Buhne. What is the exact role of the UN agencies in this endeavor?
If people are displaced, our responsibilities is to assist everyone involved in helping them. We aren't usually involved with transporting people. We deal with them once they have been displaced and then provide that assistance. But it's important that they be free to move where they want to move, whether that's to stay, whether that's to move to other locations.
Now what happens in the Ltte controlled areas? Do you have any access to these people, or is that mainly a...
Yeah, well, in agreement with the government, I mean, we've been working in those areas for some time, and we continue to have access to those people because that's where most of the people are displaced. right now, and we work closely through the offices of the GA to provide support to them. For example, with the recent displacements that had happened in Kilinochchi, the GA Kilinochchi took a very good leadership role in organizing the agencies that were working there to provide the best support to those people.
I'd like to end with just asking you about the major challenges in improving the lives of these IDPs. What do you think these challenges are, and what developments would you like to see in the future?
So I think there's immediate challenges which are more, I guess, material in terms of people getting food to them, people having medical care, people having shelter. I think the next challenge is to create conditions where those people can return back to where they came from, and to return in conditions of safety, and to return in conditions where they can get back to a normal life. If situation is such as you've had in Sri Lanka, where you have a lot of people who've been displaced for many, many years, for example, around Puttalam, then you have to think of what we call durable solutions. And that includes more difficult things that aren't just material, like where do you fit into the society, how do you have land, essentially what sort of future do you have living away from where you're from.
Neil, thank you for talking with me today. It has been very interesting tapping into your knowledge on this situation. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks.